for $2 to cover, a buck cover, you could go listen to the best jazz in the world, Miles Davis and for there's a place called on 46th Street. You could go hear I'm serious. You could hear everybody, Condito, and you could also go listen to Lenny Bruce. Talk about how God is merchandising. What's for sale this week, and for all the priests to push. It was just awful but funny, and he of course was coked up anyway. And you also could get anything you wanted back then. We called it Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Well, I covered police in Chicago as a kid for the City News Bureau, which is the old crime business. And you learn the cops. There was two things they would do, but I worked night shifts, and they would come in, and it'd be pretty nice if they had a little extra stuff they caught, some dope, but they throw a bag at us, and they used to always give us the 8mm porn movies. We could watch those on the camera. This is back in the 60s, 61. And so when you do that, the only thing you couldn't do in Chicago is you couldn't report on crooked cops, of which there were plenty. And you couldn't report about the cops and their deals with the Giancana mob on West Street, the big play street. So I learned early on, it was a tyranny, really. I mean, I learned about censorship right away as a kid reporter. You couldn't do it. If some guy at the cop station up in the near north side of Chicago, where all the bars were and the play places were, if they reported some guy that had 11 bullet holes in him as a traffic accident, forget about it. You can't go and say, "What do you mean traffic accident?" That was a mob hit. I grew up in that world too. I mean, I knew about the mob. Yeah. And it ended up, one of the things I did for the New York Times after the war was over, I did 6 months with a wonderful reporter named Jeff Girth on a guy named Sidney Korshak that ran the mob in Chicago, and that was about as much fun as putting your head in a foxhole or climbing into it. I got more death threats, but this stuff doesn't compare to what growing up in Chicago trained you to not worry about what the New York Times and Washington Post thinks about my stories. And that's what makes Substack so interesting. I didn't know about it. A terrific journalist, old time friend of mine, Matt Taibbi, who's doing good stuff.
Yeah, I followed him.
He said, "You can publish here. You'll be fine." A lot of people read it. And so it's an alternative form. But getting back to the real story, what is the end game? And why did he do the pipeline? He did it in September 26th. And the guys, you should know, the guys who were assigned to do it, they were assigned in this first started 2 months before the war began in 2021. Jake Sullivan has, as president's national security advisor, convene a meeting in a very secure place in the executive office building, which is in the same compound. It's just across the street from the White House, but it's still covered by walls and fences and guards. And they have a very secure reading room. He convened a meeting with guys in the NSA, CIA, the Pentagon, the National, actually the Joint Chiefs, the Treasury and State Department, not that many. And they were asked a question, we need options. We need something we want to stop the Russians. What can we do to make the Russians not go? Because, that would be hell. Go into Ukraine. Despite all the talk, there was a lot of worry about that. You don't mess around with the Russian army.
Nope.
And I used the phrase I used was actually the work of art in the meeting. The question they asked the White House: do you want reversible or irreversible options? We're talking about before Christmas, before New Year's. And the word came back, well, irreversible. Reversible would be sanctions. Ask the Cubans about sanctions. They've been sanctioned since 61.
Yeah.
And they're saying, look how the sanctions didn't work on Russia we put on, that the Biden administration put on. Russia's still going. There's still American companies there. Not everyone left. And so they don't have McDonald's. There's something not as good. They still line up for it. And the irreversible turned out to be, let's go after the pipeline. And you have to understand, as I didn't realize how important this is. I'm going to write more. I've been writing more on Substack. I'm writing every week on this because it's fun. And by the way, I use the same editors I used at the New Yorker and the London Review and the same fact checkers. It's out of my pocket, it's said, but there's no, I'm my own producer.
Oh, great.
And what happens is there's a long history of America after containment, and after World War II, we had to contain communism, even as long as the Kennedy administration, about worrying about Russian natural gas and oil. Russia had the lock on that stuff. All over. When you start going towards Siberia, there's nothing but stuff underground. And the worry was they were going to use their gas and sell it to Germany, which was trying to become an industrial complex after the war, after the destruction of the war, and be a good neighbor. That's the other. It was called Ostpolitik. Willy Brandt started this idea of telling the people he had raped and murdered and destroyed, I'm going to be a good buddy to you. I'm the French. I know you hate me, but I'm going to be an industrial powerhouse. I'm going to trade with you at good terms. I'm going to make you guys realize we're really a solid country. And they are. The Germans are incredibly competent. And they were getting gas and oil from Russia early. And we always worried about it. That's Germany's part of it. We always thought that eventually West Europe would accept Germany at some point. NATO's a force. And these countries, the oil and gas was particularly the gas was so cheap. Russia had more than they could use, and they were downstreaming it to the companies, the distributors all over Europe. So here's a fortress America. We built up Western Europe after the war, but they have no oil and gas in Western Europe. And the idea that Russian had an inroad was always a problem. It's not a new idea. It's been going on forever and ever. I'm writing about that next week. It's always been an idea. It's always been in the theme. It's always been a theme in the Congress and so here Biden finally bit the bullet. Here they built Nord Stream 1, these pipelines. The first one came on in 2011, and it was a gold mine for the Germans, just a gold mine. The largest chemical company in the world, BASF, 100,000 employees, was just making a fortune. They own and by the way, it's now it had its first layoff ever. And it's also talking to the Chinese about maybe moving some facilities there. They're not hurt that bad, Germany, because they're subsidizing the oil price, and the price of electricity. The French are paying 500 times more, 5 times more.
The numbers just came out for energy increase in Germany this last month. It went up 19.1%.
Of increase of available or the price?
Energy prices went up 19.1%.
Oh, I didn't see that. I know before that they kept the kilowatt.
Came out today.
Well, it's because it's colder now. They had a very mild winter. Remember, we saw the pictures of no ski. They had a mild winter, and also, they under pressure from us, the Germans had shut down the new pipeline. It was Nord Stream 2 was brand new when it was done by 2020, and they filled it with gas, 750 miles full of gas. That's what went up when they bombed it, but. Schultz, the chancellor, had the power. He had shut it down. He had the power to open it. And so I think Biden's thought, I don't know. I'm just giving you a good guess. It's not only my guess. The community has had this assessment too, that he saw a stalemate coming. He saw winter coming. He thought inevitably if it was a bad winter and if the stalemate, Germany wasn't interested in putting a lot of money in for war. They learned a lesson in World War II. Their militarization has always been a sore spot there. There's a lot of opposition to it. A lot of people want them to build up the army, but there's opposition. Anywhere, depending on your count. The police said last weekend there was a demonstration against the Ukraine war, and the police said 15,000 or 13,000. The newspaper people who were there, some of them, and the organizers said 50,000. It was a huge crowd anyway against the war. And remember, like we had that started here against the war in Vietnam. There's a lot of analogies to it. And just to go on with the story. So I think what Biden did by telling Schultz, taking the option of opening up the gas line and maybe taking gas from Russia and maybe not giving as much support to Ukraine, particularly as it looked like it was going to go south, which it will be. Don't worry about what you read in the newspapers because they have the New York, their coverage has just been, some of it is very good. The New York Times has a lot of great reporters, but the coverage on Iraq has been comical. It's not, You can't tell how many people have signed up for Substack with me and send me letters. You can do it on my emails there and said, thank God we finally got somebody who might tell us the truth. They smell it. It's not good. It's too pro the White House and Congress, which has always been always anti-communist and Congress, I don't expect in the Vietnam War the Democrats